Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. Brian Wilson, no, not that Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys, but Brian Wilson, the former Labour MP, has said that Scotland is suffering because it's being led by what he calls insufferable zealots. These Green and SNP politicians who like to bring in this wonderful virtue signalling policies which they think makes them look good and will save the planet, but in actual fact will do real harm to people who don't live within the central belt. They are unaware, these people, of the great green yonder. They live in an echo chamber of Holyrood, of Edinburgh or of Glasgow. They know nothing of the Highlands and Islands, and they do not see the harm that their policies are doing. So we'll take a look at this to show why Brian Wilson is completely correct, why the SNPGreen zealots are completely wrong, and the harm that will happen unless these people are brought to heel and shown the error of their ways with their lunatic policies. Here goes. So Scotland is being run by insufferable zealots, as SNP and Scottish Greens condemned by former MP. Former Labour MP Brian Wilson slated the Scottish Government for once again angering Scots through net zero madness, this time around banning wood burning stoves. Now the problem with net zero is it's a load of old rubbish. It's impossible. It's physically the laws of physics. It's impossible. And so they're trying to physically do something which is physically impossible and trying to convince people that this is the way forward. Well, if they stopped lying and just explained why they think that net zero is possible and then proved it to the satisfaction of scientists all around the world, then perhaps they could have some kind of argument that we could believe in. But since every physicist in the entire universe that ever existed knows that it's impossible, then why are they bothering? Net zero is a myth. It's a fairy story. A former MP has blasted the SNP and the Scottish Greens as insufferable zealots, as he offered a damning assessment of the scandal surrounding a ban on wood-burning stoves. Now, to be honest, I get banning it in a city. If everyone had wood-burning stoves, you'd end up with the sort of problems you had in London in the 50s with the old pea soupers and things like that. But out in the countryside, much less dense, and if you don't have a reliable gas supply, which you don't in a lot of these places, burning wood and peat is the only way these places can keep warm in winter. And if you didn't have it, what do you do when there's an electrical power cut? Freeze to death? Seems to be the way. At least if you've got a gas supply, you've got a gas fire, you can light a gas fire. If nothing else, it'll keep you warm. But even if you've got gas central heating and the electric goes off, you're screwed, aren't you? Unless you do what I do and buy generators. Also, a lifetime supply of real coal. Also, I've got solar and a battery system. I'm not giving up my power for anyone. Anyway, many in communities in the Highlands and Islands use the stoves, and they are especially handy during a power cut. Bada bing. All new builds in Scotland will no longer be able to install them as part of the executive's push for net zero, this mythical thing. Let me tell you, I've got more belief in the Loch Ness Monster than net zero. Put it that way. There's been a major backlash to these proposals, with even SNP MSP Kate Forbes demanding urgent talks with her own administration about this, because Kate Forbes lives out in the great beyond. She knows how important these things are. She understands the necessity for alternative energy sources, even if they're not particularly green. I mean, and to be honest, no one's actually proven that a wood burner is particularly bad, especially if it's a high quality wood. Because it is virtually all burned. There's very little that actually goes up the flue. And on a slow burn, it can provide hours and hours of heat, relatively small. As opposed to what? Turning your electric heater on in the winter and having a gas-powered fire station fire it up makes no sense at all, does it? Patrick Harvey, the Scottish Greens minister and prick, has insisted that there is no ban on wood-burning stoves in social media. Lies. But refused to be interviewed about it by the BBC. He ran away very bravely because he knew that people would actually ask the question, are you banning it? And he would have to say yes. Because there's no ban on buying them, no ban on if you've currently got one. yet, but new builds will not be allowed them. In the same way as new builds have to have heat pumps now, and come 2028, rental properties, private rental properties must have them, and by 2035 everybody must have them. So this, there's no ban on them, it's no ban on them yet, but the banning is starting now. And for these people out there, you know, what are they going to do in 2035 when you're not allowed to burn anything? Let me tell you, I'll still be burning. Screw Harvey, I'll throw Harvey on there. He claimed it was just building standards rules changing that means they can't be built in new homes. Bollocks, Harvey. You're a lying, two-faced little twonk. Anyway, former Labour MP Brian Wilson has hit out at the confusion brought about by the policy and blamed the SNP and the Greens for refusing to take regular Scots with them on the journey to this mythical net zero. He labelled ministers as insufferable zealots who are leaving people in the cold, quite literally, by treating them as reluctant laggards. Well, of course they're reluctant. They want things that work. They want, in the winter, strangely enough, to be, you know, warm. And heat pumps don't do it, especially in the colder areas of Scotland. They just don't work, and people will die because the water isn't getting hot enough to kill everything in it. Writing in the Herald, he pointed out that people needed to be persuaded to support environmentally friendly measures that affect them, and not be dragooned into line by legislation and regulation in order to meet the aspirations of their moral superiors and tiny little ineffective men who've achieved nothing in their lives but have suddenly been thrust into a position of power, much like Harvey, a man who's done literally nothing with his life, is a man of massive underachievement, a man who is really a very inadequate little man in every respect. Now he's got this power, and he's like someone who was bullied at school, and look, I've got power, I'm going to make the others pay now, and he's like that. Anyway, he warned that those living in rural communities are rightly angered by the decision to outlaw wood-burning stoves, and that the government did not consider jobs in these areas either. He said those who come after us will endure power cuts without the glow of peat or wood to bring relief. Hopefully, they will still be allowed to huddle around their candles. Mr. Harvey's backpedal that wood burning will be permitted in emergencies compounds the farce. Oh, you can have it in an emergency. That's okay. I'll just build this house. I'll put a wood fire in just for emergencies. What an absolute prick. This is a man who's not actually thought out what he's doing, realised how bad it sounds now that he's looked at reality, is furiously trying to reverse ferret it and make it look as though, that was not what I intended all along, when we all know full well it was. He said, and this is Wilson continuing, he said, incidentally, though it'll be a double whammy in Mr. Harvey's book, his edict will effectively kill off peat cutting in the Highlands and Islands, the sole purpose of which is for domestic fuel. That is a cash-free transaction which rewards hard toil with the means of heating homes. Sad to see that honourable culture wiped out with a stroke of green ink. Indeed, this is something that's existed in the Highlands for thousands of years. It's a culturally important thing. It actually is part of land management. And Harvey wants to wipe it out because he thinks he's saving the planet. I think we could do a lot more for the planet by burying Harvey in it. Wilson admitted to having both a wood-burning stove and a heat pump to heat his home, and claimed that the ban on the former would have been supported by Scots if it had been explained and clear exemptions given for off-grid homes. He concluded a general public willingness exists to do the right thing for the environment. Not here, mate. Tell you what I want to do. I want to keep warm, and I intend to, and I don't give one flying F what anyone in any politician says. I'm staying warm. He said the same applies to the complex challenge of combining good practice with affordability and practicality when it comes to heating homes. But balance is also needed. Banning fuels on which a significant part of the Scottish population depends, particularly of areas of highest fuel poverty, is a fool's errand. And of course, Harvey is that fool. I'm coming up. What we have here, and I do point this out a lot, but it's another example of a lack of the ability to see the consequences of policies. Harvey sits there and thinks, oh, look at me, I'm brilliant, look at this, I'm going to save the damn world. We're just not going to allow 93 people to burn a bit of wood. Oh, that's going to save the planet. Meanwhile, India has just burnt 1 year 1 billion tonnes of coal. How much do you think it's going to... How many trees do we have to cut down and burn to match that in Scotland? Unbelievable, isn't it? Anyway, he's sitting there and he's doing this. He's realised now the backlash has become very, very strong. He's now forced to accept the reality. And so he's trying to do that, walk it back. Oh, no, that's not what I meant. That's not what I meant. And he's desperate to make it look as though he's not a complete and utter prick. But I'm afraid that boat has sailed. Because, Harvey, you totally are. You're an insufferable little turd who has no idea at all what you're talking about. You've got no qualifications. You know bugger all about the environment. You know bugger all about fuel security. You know bugger all about economics. And you know bugger all about living out in the wilds. And yet you see fit to sit there in Holyrood and pontificate on how other people should live their lives just to fulfil your wet dreams of a non-existent net zero world. Well, if you're truly bothered by everything, get on your little bike, pedal down to the airport, get on a plane, piss off to India, piss off to China, and tell them to stop poisoning the world. Those two countries, 75% of all the world's pollution. And you think stopping a few wood burners in Scotland is going to make one slightest bit of difference? Done. Thanks very much for watching. Do please hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, leave a like, leave a comment, please share the video, and I'll speak to you later. Bye.